Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brianna Lee, and today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics. And I say favorite not because it's controversial, not because it's countercultural, but because it is one of the most misunderstood, misinterpreted, and mistaught topics of scripture. Part of that is our fault as Christians, and I just love being able to kind of just like set the record straight and to be able to teach other believers and even non-believers what the Lord actually meant by modesty being important and by it being a command. And so I'm just so excited. We're just gonna jump right into it. So is modesty important? 1000% yes. Any command that is given to us by God is important. It is something that we definitely need to be able to apply to our everyday lives. When it comes to this topic specifically, it can be sometimes a hard pill to swallow when today's culture does not reflect modesty whatsoever. Whether it's within the heart or within the outward appearance, that's just not something that you see often, whether it's with celebrities in movies and TV shows, and just anytime you walk into a Walmart, like it is just not reflected in many parts of the world, but I can really only speak for America because that's where I live and that's the only place I've been. So there are two pieces of scripture that always just jump out to me when it comes to this specific topic because they're so plain and simple. There's really no getting around it. But I think that because of how it is taught, instead of people reading it for what it is, it can be completely misinterpreted, and certain parts of the scriptures can be emphasized and even taken out of context and kind of used to create like a false doctrine, when we need to look at the whole thing and be able to discern, what is the Lord actually trying to say to us right now. So the first one that I always think of is in 1 Timothy chapter 2 verses 9 through 10, where it says, "In like manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair, or gold, or pearls, or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works." And so that was when Paul was writing his letter to Timothy, and he was talking about the guidelines for women. And I want to start this off by saying modesty is not just outward. It is just as important, if not actually more important, to have a modest heart than it does to have modest apparel. Because even though, sure, that's what Paul started off by saying in modest apparel, I think that for some reason people will think, well, since that's the first thing he said, then that's the first thing we need to focus on. But we can actually start to have a very pharisaical approach to that, because you can wear a turtleneck and a loose skirt all the way to the floor and still have an immodest heart. And so sure, on the outward you dress modestly, good for you, but you have an immodest spirit within you that is not pleasing in the eyes of God. And when you actually focus on your heart and work with the Lord and him make a clean heart in you and a modest heart, then naturally you will dress modestly. Like, it'll just happen because the inward has already been done, and now the outward is able to reflect that. And I really don't want to get into what modesty looks like outwardly versus what is immodest, just because I feel like, for one, like I said, that's not the main thing we're looking at here. And two, it can be very easy for people to feel like whoever is like stating that, like for instance it would be me, that I would be coming across as holier than thou. And then that's when it also gets super sketchy, when you're in terms of not mixing your personal conviction with biblical command. It is a biblical command for me to dress modesty, but how modesty looks like for me and how the Lord pricks my heart for that is different than maybe my friend or my neighbor or whoever. My personal conviction is not something I should be pushing on anyone. It's the biblical command that I should be teaching to others. And so I just don't want to even really get into that. There are some things that are blatantly immodest, and then there are some things that are obviously modest, but I just don't think that that would be a smart route to go down. So we're just going to stick to scripture. So yes, Paul talks about modest apparel, but He also talks about that we should adorn ourselves with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broided hair or gold or pearls or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works. So, how we treat others, our good works, how we carry ourselves, our demeanor, is also so crucial for true modesty. In 1 Peter chapter 3 verses 3 and 4 it says, "Whose adorning let it not be the outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing gold or of putting on of apparel," which is so funny because this is starting to sound very similar to what Paul just said to Timothy. But it continues to say, "But let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price." I think that sometimes, and at the end of the day, it does like kind of rely on conviction to an extent. Some people, especially in my denomination, for those of y'all that don't know, I am Apostolic Pentecostal. There are some people in my denomination that think that like all jewelry like should not be worn altogether. Like there's even, people in my denomination, not my church, but in, the organization, that even believe that like they just don't even wear like even like their wedding band or something, because sometimes they'll take it as like they'll take this piece of scripture or other parts of scripture, and honestly it could also be personal conviction that comes into play, that we're not supposed to do all these these elaborate hairstyles and wear gold or all this like super expensive name brand clothing, all that stuff. That's not what Paul's saying. He's not saying that all of these things are an abomination to the Lord, don't wear them. If that's really what the Lord wanted us to know, then that's what Paul would have said. But what he's trying to emphasize is that those things are not the first thing that we need to be looking at. The first things that we need to be looking at is, once again, in the heart, in the spirit. Who are we inwardly? That's what the Lord always weighs at the end of the day. And that shows throughout scripture, like from front to back, but especially one of my favorite stories is in 1 Samuel, when the Lord rejected Saul to be king of Israel because Saul rejected the Lord's commands when it came to the Amalekites. So the Lord sent Samuel to go to Jesse and to see all of his sons, and he's like, "I'm going to anoint one of Jesse's sons to be the new king and to follow me." And it was kind of funny because one of the first sons of Jesse that Samuel saw, he was like, "Oh, surely this is it. This man, he's good looking, he's tall, like this has got to be the one." And the Lord was like, "Not that one, And then he like went down the list of all the other sons. He was like, "Not that one, not that one, not that one." And the Lord even said like, "A man judges on the appearance, but I judge the heart." And to actually put it verbatim, he said, "But the Lord said unto Samuel, Look not on his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart." I mean, man, man, I think it's so easy for us to focus on outward for anything. Not even just for modesty, but just for anything. Naturally, when we see someone, we are already naturally judging them. Hopefully we're not judging them in a way that is sinful, okay? But, we naturally make judgment of a person based off of how they look. I feel like that's just the natural flesh part in us, is to be able to do that. Part of that has to be, just using your discernment too, is does this person look like a trustworthy, safe person I need to be around, or should I maybe walk on the other side of the street, But the fact that the Lord emphasizes that he looks on the heart. It doesn't matter how attractive we are, how tall we are, how strong we are, how big our muscles, none of that. At the end of the day, if we don't have a heart that is after the Lord's, then literally none of that matters. It didn't matter to begin with, but it definitely amounts to nothing without that. Now, as I was saying earlier, this is not what society wants us to believe anymore. And I feel like I've actually talked about it in a couple different videos. I think it was the one where it was like, is self-love and body positivity, like, are those movements toxic? And then I think I mentioned it in my very first video, kind of just explaining why I only wear dresses and skirts. And I think for all of those things, especially in the body positivity and self-love movement video, one thing that I emphasized was that we are called to be set apart from the world. We're supposed to be in the world but not of it. And I think that sometimes that can just be really hard, and not just in the sense of it's hard because, like, just dying to your flesh is just tough sometimes, but hard in the sense of it can almost feel lonely because it's like you just see all these people. Say you go to your local Target, or you go to an event of some sort, a wedding that has mixed people there. And when I say mixed people, I don't mean race, but I mean, like, people that are believers and then people that are non-believers. And you see everyone around you dressed how society says is okay. And then you're the only one dressed differently. Does that make sense? Dressed in a way that's pleasing to the Lord. For me, when I first started having any type of modesty convictions, that was probably the hardest part for me. It wasn't necessarily the part dying to my flesh and just being able to be more obedient to his word, but it was more so the fact I just felt almost like, I felt like I was sticking out like a sore thumb. Like, I don't look like I belong here. I feel like I look almost too set apart. So I feel like when you can start to feel those very real and valid feelings, sometimes Satan will try to use that to be able to infiltrate your mind and, like, be able to try to whisper in your ear, like, hey, maybe it's because dressing like everyone else isn't that bad. Maybe it's because that command was really just a suggestion, and he'll try to deter you from just following the Lord. He'll try to alter your path just a little bit to where you're no longer going in the same direction as him. It's almost like adjacent. But I don't want to be adjacent. I want to be following right behind him. I want to be following right behind Jesus. I want to be right next to him, holding his hand on this journey, because it could be tough. And that doesn't even just go with the journey of modesty. I mean, that goes with the journey of life, really. So if anyone else is experiencing that feeling of, like, loneliness, or almost feeling like you just stick out in a way that may even make you feel uncomfortable, just know that that's valid. I've felt that before, but also know that being obedient to the Lord's word is much more important than just being uncomfortable in a situation like that. It is. And I think that, and I say all that to say, like, or not to say that, get over it, girl, Your feelings don't matter, just get over it, move on. No, but I say all that to say that there's going to be times where we're going to be uncomfortable. Following Jesus is not easy, okay? He even said, the world hated me before they hated you. And to just be able to, like, really think on of all that Jesus has done for us and had to go through for us and still continues to do, on all the different amazing ways that he shows up in our lives, I feel like sometimes I just hit myself in the face. I feel like sometimes I can't even complain. Like, I'm complaining that I feel slightly awkward in this situation because I'm dressed different, or everyone else is drinking and I'm not, or, everybody else is smoking and I'm not. But in reality, that's nothing. That really is nothing when you try to equate it to all that he's done for us and the very, like, little things that we are supposed to be doing for him. When I compare those two, his sacrifices and his love for me completely outweigh anything that he can ever call me to do. And so I think sometimes just holding fast to that and being able to look at it in that light makes it a lot easier. And also know that sometimes you just kind of need to change your environment. There's very few situations and events that I go to now, besides, like, the grocery store and things like that, which, I don't really care if I'm the only one wearing a skirt, I'm the only one wearing a skirt, whatever. But there are others out there that are also obedient to the Lord. Like, you're not the only one. There are others out there that share similar, if not the same exact convictions that you have. There are churches out there that teach Bible and not just this self-help type talk to make you feel better about what you're going through, which that's a whole video for something else, y'all. But you're not alone. And even if you were the last person on this earth to, even if you were like Noah, the last righteous man, righteous woman in this case on earth, you still have company, you still have a friend in Jesus. Every time, he's always there. He is always there. The only time he is far from you is when you decide not to turn away and depart from evil and you partake in wickedness. Other than that, when you try to follow him, he is right there every single time. Never fails. So you're never truly alone. The last thing I'm going to say about this, because I don't want this to continue to be a misinterpreted thing. Modesty is not just for women. If you really wanted to learn more about what modesty looks like for man, I think that my husband would probably love to do a quick video on what that looks like for him as a man and how the Lord calls him to live, and just men in general to live. But I want to emphasize that this is not just for women. Modesty is not just for women. That drives me nuts when some people almost overemphasize that this is only for women, when in reality it's not. It's just as much for men as it is for women. I'm only speaking about it because I am a woman, so I feel like my perspective is best told to other women as a woman. But yeah, I hope that all of that made sense. I hope that that was encouraging to someone out there. I hope that that edified you in some way. If there is any more misconceptions that you may have with modesty, if there's any questions, if there's any disagreements, you can always feel free to email me. My email is in the description box below, and you can also always feel free to comment down below anything you would like. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.